Well, the usual reasons for hunger and drought, crop failures and conflicts. VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young reports that governmental, political and even ethnic factors can amplify the problem. In this final segment of a three-part series, the underlying story of Somalia's hunger is examined.
Hardship, a word that well describes the Horn of Africa nation Somalia. Overwhelming poverty, 73% of the population, according to the UN Development Program. An average life expectancy of 50 for men, 53 for women. An Islamist insurgency driving people off the land to refugee and internally displaced persons camps. The absence of rain to grow crops and hunger that is spreading alarmingly. The United Nations has said that over half of Somalia's more than 11 million people are at risk of famine. Making the situation worse is the government's shortcomings in addressing food insecurity, as noted via Skype by Chatham House researcher Ahmed Soliman.
In terms of the response required, it's much more difficult to implement in the Somalia context because of the lack of institutions, because of the lack of infrastructure, and also the lack of social safety net.
These critical elements normally are provided by a country's government, and that is something Somalia lacks, according to Center for Strategic and International Studies Africa Director Jennifer Cooke.
The extent of its powers and its actual reach do not go beyond Mogadishu, the capital city. So it has none of the structures, none of the infrastructure, none of the connections that allow it to serve its people in any capacity outside the capital city.
Somalia's civil war and government collapse in the 1990s was followed in 2006 by the emergence of al-Shabaab Islamist insurgents. A severe drought came over Somalia in 2010. By July 2011, the UN declared a state of famine in parts of the country. By 2012, more than 250 million people had died. Al-Shabaab contributed to that casualty count by denying access by relief agencies to many afflicted parts of the country. The insurgent group remains active, conducting terrorist operations that the UN says have resulted in nearly 1 million refugees and more than 1 million persons internally displaced. In February 2017, a new Somali president, Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, was inaugurated. Then, in early April, Farmajo declared war on al-Shabaab, giving the insurgents 60 days to surrender and promising amnesty and job training for fighters who complied. Al-Shabaab dismissed the Somali president's demand and continued its terrorism. The difficult situation faced by relief agencies trying to work in the midst of a military conflict is set forth via Skype by NGO Oxfam senior analyst Scott Paul.
It's going to cause complications, as will any military intervention anywhere, really. The question is, are plans being laid out to accommodate humanitarian concerns and humanitarian fallout, or is this an instance, as you're seeing in some other places around the continent, where humanitarian considerations really don't even factor into the military plans?
The Oxfam analyst says the best his NGO and other relief agencies can do is to try to ensure that humanitarian concerns are not dismissed by any side in the conflict. But that hasn't been the case so far in Somalia, where al-Shabaab's insurgency and the Somali government's lack of control in parts of the country have left millions desperately hungry. And with each day, more Somalis are lost. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.